happened Saturday, and the news of Andrew Luck's sudden retirement broke during live action. It broke out during the Colts game against the Bears. And after that game, Colts owner and CEO Jim Irsay seemed to think the team hasn't seen the last of Andrew Luck.
This is an unusual situation. I mean, we see Tiger Woods come back and win the Masters. We see, different things. Michael Jordan retire and unretire. I mean, in this case, we just wish him the best and maybe that he finds some clarity. I would say it's possible. We are focused on having a great season still, and we really believe we can. And so it's possible. But again, I think no one knows, and he'd be the first to tell you that no one knows. So only time will tell.
Some much appreciated optimism from Jim Irsay there as we say good morning to Tom Pelissero. He's live with the Colts all morning on NFL Network. Tom, he's leaving a lot of money on the table by retiring. Get into a little of the nitty-gritty for me with the financial impact of his decision.
Well, in the short term, Kay, Andrew Luck has given up a little over $9 million in base salary this year, a little over $52 million on the 3 years he had remaining on his contract. And as owner Jim Irsay referenced on Saturday night, it's probably closer to $500 million when you factor in the future contracts that Andrew Luck would be leaving on the table if, in fact, he does not play again. Now, our Mike Garafolo and Ian Rappaport reported yesterday that the Colts are not going to pursue the $16.8 million that they are entitled to pursue under the collective bargaining agreement. The sides reached a settlement. That is certainly not unprecedented with a player who has been a star for the Colts and has suffered as many injuries as Andrew Luck has. The Colts don't need the cap space. They're over $46 million under the cap, and most of that cash has already been paid out. Their new starting quarterback, by the way, Jacoby Brissett, do a little over $2 million in the final year of his rookie contract, an opportunity for him to earn a lot more now. Not out of the realm of possibility the Colts could be looking to address that contract sooner than later. We will hear from Brissett later today and see him on the practice field with the Colts at 1:35 Eastern.
Thank you so much, Tom. We appreciate the update. Thanks for being us with there live with the Colts getting the mood. And, of course, we heard Irsay say he was excited about Brissett. A lot of the pieces on this team were, even before this decision was made, for weeks through training camp and the preseason. So more on all of this as we continue here on Good Morning Football. Luck turns 30 years old, I believe, on September 12th, gentlemen. We know that his brilliant career is being cut short. What is his legacy at this point?
His legacy is what could have been. I mentioned earlier that during that presser, I felt like he was mimicking a Hall of Fame speech because he was saying guys by name, and he was telling the organization how much he appreciated them. And that's something that a guy would do once he's inducted. But it's similar to Calvin Johnson. I remember around year 7, I said out loud, if Calvin Johnson has longevity on his side, he will go down as one of the greatest ever, and he will be a Hall of Famer. 2 years later, he retires. And I can't muster up enough energy to give the argument that Calvin Johnson belongs in the Hall of Fame before individuals that played a long time. The thing about this game, even as great as Andrew Luck was in his short career, there's so many guys that are going to play at a high level for longer. So it's always going to be what could have been, what should have been, and as fans, what we wanted.
His legacy is he was the guy who retired early. That's what it is. And I that's not dismissive of what Andrew Luck accomplished, because no one had a rise as an NFL career, maybe with the exception of Roethlisberger and Russell Wilson, like Andrew Luck did. This is a guy who in his first year went to the wild card round, his second year divisional round, third year went to the AFC Championship game. It was only a natural progression that he eventually would go to a Super Bowl and win one. But when you do something so dramatic as retiring at 29 when you still could play football, that's the thing here. I don't think we're mentioning this enough. This wasn't some injury where he can't come back. There's a chance by October Andrew Luck feels 100%, and he's like, I'm good to go. He's choosing to walk away, and I think of the aforementioned Calvin Johnson. I think of Barry Sanders, who right before training camp in '98 said, I'm good. I think of Sandy Koufax, which goes back way long. I think of a guy like Pat Tillman to an extent of, hey, I could still play the prime. I'm going to pursue something else. I think Luck is an interesting guy in this league in that he's got other intellectual interests than just football. And the football guys are going to cringe at that and say, I don't want to hear about his love for book reading or international travel or the Premier League. But guess what? Andrew Luck is a full Renaissance man. Football doesn't define him. It's just a part of his life. So I am fascinated by this, but I think when we look back on it, Kay, to Nate's point, it's gonna be what could have been, but also he's one of those guys that left a lot on the table and walked away. It's not gonna be, man, Andrew Luck was one of the greatest of all time. It's, well, he retired early.
It's going to be almost impossible to have a conversation about Luck without talking about his retirement for years to come, because I think it's the number one most shocking I've ever had. You know, Pat Tillman had very strong convictions in other things. Michael Jordan had already won a bunch of championships, was already made. He was the GOAT. Barry Sanders was a first ballot Hall of Famer. Even someone like Ricky Williams had a whole different set of beliefs that made him walk away. I think it's the most shocking, but I don't think it's his entire legacy. I think his legacy will also be remembered as the absolutely perfect prospect, the perfect quarterback from head to toe. I think we're going to hear his name a lot around combine time every year. Not Super Bowl time, but combine time, the best I've evaluated since Andrew Luck, what he did Andrew Luck. And we talked about this off the air sometimes. I think right now, I think Andrew Luck still is the number one in the NFL in terms of pure God-given talent.
Really?
I think it's him. I think it's Cam right behind him, and then Rodgers. But just what could you possibly add to Andrew Luck to make him a better quarterback other than health, which is what makes this, we're so left in the lurch about this.
Yeah.
Why would you walk away when you're the number one most blessed guy ever? He's got a lot on his mind.
So he hasn't been successful for long enough to have any sort of shot at Hall of Fame, which you sort of scratched on, and we're saying that that's not part of his legacy. If he had won a Super Bowl, because if you told me when he was drafted, being the perfect prospect, that he, at the age of 30, did not win a Super Bowl, that would be a disappointment with how great he is and how he is the number one talented quarterback. If he has a Super Bowl under his belt, are we talking Hall of Fame potentially?
You still might be talking Hall of Fame.
Really?
Yeah, he was the best of his generation for 3 years. And, if you look at the great quarterbacks in the league, his generation is Russell Wilson and him and maybe a couple other guys that have come after. But for a good period there of 4 or 5 years, it was Brady, it was Rodgers, and it was Andrew Luck. And if you're one of those top 3 conversations, you're in it. But yeah, absolutely. If he had won a Super Bowl, we're not even talking about this, he could walk away. He didn't win a Super Bowl, and I think he didn't play enough years to really get that surefire first ballot deal. Not a shot?
I look, not a shot. He gave up early.
I hear you.
You know, I respect him for doing it, but you know that there are certain people who say he shorted the game. Like, you got to go the distance to get the jacket. Didn't get to a Super Bowl, and he chose that. He chose to say no to the Hall of Fame. He won't have a shot.
And can I quickly go back to that legacy question, and maybe we can touch on this later in the week or even later in the show. But I think he's also going to be that poster child for self-inflicted actions on the field and how it wears you down. What I mean by that is Andrew Luck was so talented, so gifted, so tough. When he sat in that pocket and he knew it was collapsing, he would take those hits, and he's sitting there wait last minute because his arm was strong enough to throw a 60-yard post route while taking a shot in the back. He would also scramble outside the pocket and leave his feet for insignificant first down. And this is not to attack Andrew Luck, but I'm calling it what it is. His legacy will also be a warning to young quarterbacks. And when they look at Andrew Luck and his career being cut short because of injury, they're going to say, take care of your body, young man. You don't always have to go out there and fight for every yard. Live to play another down. Live to play another year. Live to have a long career. And I feel like that's going to be a part of his legacy as well.
To button up what Tom Pelissero was saying to start this hour, and the way that the Colts aren't recouping money that they could recoup from him. They could go out and ask for $24 million for Andrew Luck. They're saying, no, don't worry about it. We're going to go for that. They could do a lot of things. In the salary cap, there's dead money tied to Andrew Luck that they could say, you owe us that. I am still, this morning on Monday, not convinced that we're done seeing Andrew Luck. I think if he feels good in October, good in November.
Don't do this to me,
Good in
Schrader.
December.
Or 2020.
He's 29. Next year, come August, Andrew Luck could be the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. He's retiring, and I'm not questioning that he's got mental exhaustion, but the way Irsay's talking about guys coming back and that they're going to make sure, you don't go and get blood money after that. You say, okay, you take we're not going to come after your $24 million.
Yeah.
Because I think they're thinking long picture of the relationship with Andrew Luck, and this door is not necessarily closed yet.
But the window is right now. That's the thing. We can talk about the future, and he's such a tremendous talent, but we're talking the playmakers, the offensive line that can finally protect him, and we're talking about the defense. That's what's so disappointing. And the only way that I can sort of understand what Colts fans are going through is, or give them a slide for booing him, is that it's the shock of the timing of it. Right now, preseason, week 3, ahead of a season where you are a juggernaut in the AFC, it's wild.
It is. And the fact that he decided now I'm going to walk away from one of the best teams. I've been waiting for this team. This is the year to walk away. You know, he's always seems wise beyond his years. But when I saw Rap Sheet's tweet about how he wants to travel the world, that to me seemed like a very 29-year-old thing to say. Like, that gets old after a month, dude. I'm telling you, that is not a lifestyle. I'm going to travel with my wife. That's great. But after a couple of weeks, you're like, can we go home?
But I respect the